Put together, it means ensuring the brightest and boldest amongst us, in all sectors of society, are given the support to find the answers.
A shocking royal development has sparked waves of excitement across the UK and beyond. In a move that left palace insiders stunned, Prince William has quietly confirmed a devastating shift in Meghan Markle's royal standing. This decision signals far more than protocol or ceremonial adjustment. Behind closed doors, careful strategies, urgent intelligence, and unspoken truths converge to shape a future that can no longer include her. The nation watches in disbelief. Whispers of tension ripple through royal corridors, and a chilling question lingers. What forced this irreversible action at the heart of the monarchy? Before dawn broke, before the first hints of dawn touched the Norfolk countryside, before the streets of Britain were alive with morning chatter, or the press had begun its relentless cycle of speculation, a moment of profound consequence quietly unfolded. Inside the serene, familiar walls of Anmer Hall, Prince William sat alone in the kitchen, the early morning light casting soft shadows over the wooden table before him. The house was still, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the clock, a calm that belied the storm of revelations about to consume him. Just after 5 a.m., the prince carefully opened an intelligence dossier, a meticulously compiled record that left no room for misinterpretation or error. Page after page, the evidence painted a terrifyingly clear picture. A coordinated, methodical digital campaign had been unleashed against Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Every attack, every comment, every post had a purpose. This was not the scattered cruelty of online trolls or random strangers hiding behind anonymity. This was organized, strategic, funded, timed with precision to strike when Catherine was most vulnerable, exploiting both the public's perception and her private struggles. William's eyes scanned the pages, absorbing names, IP addresses, timestamps, and financial trails that wove a complex web of calculated malice. The deeper he read, the more the enormity of the situation became undeniable. This was not a fleeting wave of commentary that would fade with time. This was a deliberate assault, one designed to erode Catherine's reputation, undermine her confidence, and, by extension, challenge the very institution they both served. Every statistic, every digital footprint, whispered the same cold truth. Someone had orchestrated this war with a precision and patience that made it almost surgical in its cruelty. As the reality sank in, William felt a chill run through him, not of fear, but of righteous urgency. He thought of Catherine, the grace with which she had endured her recent health battles, the courage she displayed in returning to public life while still recovering. The injustice of it struck him like a thunderbolt. This was not mere commentary or critique. This was an attack on her dignity, her resilience, and everything she had fought to protect. Every moment of hesitation now carried consequences too severe to ignore. Turning the final page, the truth crystallized in his mind with unflinching clarity. Action was no longer optional. The old royal creed, never complain, never explain, offered no protection in the face of a carefully orchestrated assault.
It is the most vulnerable, those with the fewest resources, and those who have done the least to cause climate change.
Designed to manipulate perception and inflict maximum harm. To stand by silently would be complicity. To act, though irreversible, was a duty rooted in love, loyalty, and necessity. In that quiet kitchen, the weight of responsibility pressed down, heavy but unequivocal. Prince William understood that the path forward was both singular and permanent. A line had to be drawn, not a warning, not a negotiation, a definitive boundary that would shield Catherine, defend the monarchy, and send a clear message to those behind the attacks. By the time the first pale rays of sunlight brushed the Sandringham estate, the future king had already begun to plot the course ahead. The era of passive endurance was over. The battle had begun, and there would be no turning back. Prince William went through an intelligence dossier and was sure there was a campaign against his wife that needed to be addressed urgently. But who could be behind it, and how would he put an end to such a disheartening campaign against his wife? Now let's uncover the quiet royal verdict. Meghan's royal future ends. There were no flashing cameras, no hurried press briefings, no grandiose public statements. The world outside Anmer Hall remained entirely unaware, yet inside, a quiet but earth-shaking decision had just been made. Prince William, calm yet resolute, had issued a single, precise directive to his closest senior aides.
Over the years, I've not talked enough about, our mother.
Never enough.
He's doing this campaign.
Activate the protection protocol. It was a phrase loaded with gravity, a command that carried far-reaching consequences not just for his wife, Catherine, but for the very structure and perception of the monarchy itself. In that moment, the air inside the hall seemed to thicken, the weight of authority pressing down in a way only those in proximity could truly feel. But beyond the walls, the implications of William's order were immediate, decisive, and irreversible. The instruction did more than safeguard a family. It quietly severed the final threads binding Meghan Markle to the royal institution. There would be no fanfare, no public acknowledgement. Yet the message could not have been clearer. The ambiguity that had lingered for years, a haze of speculation and uncertainty, had been swept away in a single, deliberate action. Access that had once seemed casual or tentative was abruptly revoked. Invitations that had been extended as gestures of goodwill were silently rescinded.
And I think a lot of that gets lost in what can be super dehumanizing when you look at the clickbait culture and
erased as though they had never existed. Channels of communication, informal and official alike, went dark overnight. The spaces once occupied by privilege, proximity, and influence were closed with precision. It was a removal conducted not in anger, nor as an act of public shaming, but as a strategic move, one designed to preserve dignity, authority, and the sanctity of the institution itself. The speed and finality of the decision were astonishing. By the time Britain awoke to a typical morning of news, the action had already been implemented. There was no opportunity to debate, to appeal, or to interpret. The decree was absolute.
I think you feel really confident that it was divinely ordered. Maybe all of this, our friendship, you becoming our...
The palace's machinery had shifted behind the scenes, moving with quiet efficiency to ensure that every layer of protection and isolation was seamlessly in place. Allies, advisors, and staff executed the plan with meticulous care, ensuring that the line William had drawn was both comprehensive and unassailable. Yet within this rapid, strategic maneuver, there lay a deeper, unspoken truth. The act was not only about preventing further digital attacks, media manipulation, or public distraction. It was a personal statement of loyalty, of unwavering protection for Catherine. The prince recognized that allowing ambiguity to persist would leave his wife exposed.
It's really important to stress that we can't take a fatalistic outlook on this either, for those who haven't had.
Vulnerable not only to external attacks, but to the insidious erosion of trust, influence, and reputation. By issuing the directive, William declared that her safety, dignity, and well-being would take precedence over diplomacy, public speculation, and long-standing norms of royal discretion. In that quiet early morning hour, with the first hints of light creeping over the Norfolk countryside, the course of the monarchy subtly but irrevocably shifted. Meghan Markle's future within the royal fold was no longer a matter of conjecture. It had been decisively determined. The ambiguity that had hung like a shadow for years was gone. The line had been drawn, the protocol enacted, and the consequences, both symbolic and practical, were permanent. In mere minutes, a chapter quietly closed, leaving the world to eventually catch up to a decision that had already reshaped the royal landscape forever.
Certainly after the pandemic and everything else, we crave that. We crave being able to go high and
A decisive, quiet decision was made by William, directly affecting Meghan Markle, as part of an effort to protect his wife from a digital campaign. But how will the public react once this decision becomes known? And what might it ultimately cost Meghan herself? Let's find out. Silent severance. The response to Prince William's decisive move was both immediate and unmistakable, rippling through royal circles and media outlets alike with a quiet, almost electric intensity. By the time the clock struck midday, the tone of the British media had undergone a dramatic shift. Gone were the speculative debates and the endless hedging about Meghan Markle's position within the monarchy. reporters and commentators alike began speaking in definitive terms, recognizing what had long lingered in uncertainty. Her ties to the royal institution were not merely strained, they were conclusively severed. Across headlines, phrases such as silent severance and permanent partition began to appear, capturing the weight and finality of the decision in ways that words alone rarely could. Across the Atlantic, the reverberations were just as stark. In Hollywood and Washington,
because it feels really inclusive and there's representation and it's just like a sweet love story.
planned interviews were quietly canceled. Carefully orchestrated television appearances were withdrawn without explanation. And business partners and allies began reassessing the precarious terrain they now faced. The networks of influence that had once amplified Meghan's prominence began to falter. Partnerships that had seemed unshakable suddenly faced recalibration. Agents, publicists, and brand managers all realized the implications. The royal connection they had long counted on had been decisively removed. The message was unambiguous. The monarchy had acted with authority, and any attempts to reinterpret or challenge that authority would face quiet but unyielding resistance. Days later, Prince William appeared publicly beside Catherine, Princess of Wales, at a carefully low-key engagement designed more for reassurance than spectacle.
And I felt, you're losing people every single time you have those headlines. We all get that there's a really big urgent message, and I'm not...
Observers noticed his posture, the subtle ways he positioned himself, and the silent protective gestures he employed. Every glance, every small action spoke louder than any public statement could. There was no need for words. In that understated public appearance, the reality crystallized for everyone watching. The protective barrier around Catherine was complete, and the line had been drawn clearly and irrevocably. What had been ambiguous for years had now been made absolute in a matter of minutes. The UK and the world saw that this was not a temporary rift, not a fleeting disagreement amplified by tabloids, nor a theatrical scandal designed for public consumption. This was closure, definitive and final. The move was surgical in its precision, executed with the kind of quiet authority that only those familiar with the inner workings of the palace could fully appreciate. It was a reminder of the monarchy's ability to act decisively behind closed doors, away from cameras and commentary, shaping outcomes before the public even knew a decision had been made. Even in the broader context of public perception,
I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health.
The effect was profound. Social media chatter shifted in tone, comment threads softened in certainty, and opinion pieces that had once debated the future of the Sussexes transformed into discussions of lessons learned, strategies deployed, and the undeniable finality of the moment. By the time the day ended, the narrative had shifted completely. The threat had been neutralized, boundaries had been established, and the United Kingdom, with all of its media scrutiny, public speculation, and fascination with royal affairs, finally understood what the palace had quietly confirmed: Meghan Markle's royal future.
40 friends to donate 40 minutes of their time to help mentor a woman who's mobilizing back into the workforce.
Once a subject of ambiguity, was now conclusively, irrevocably settled. Britain now faces the stark reality. Meghan's future in the royal family has been permanently cut off, triggering cancelled interviews and shaken partnerships. But how explosive is the dossier that exposes her? And how critical is the timing of this campaign? Now, let's delve into the hidden war behind the headlines. Digital siege on the crown. It was only in the quiet hours that the full weight of the dossier revealed itself, like a storm hidden beneath deceptively calm skies. The evidence, meticulously compiled by a team of investigators, painted a chilling picture. This was not idle chatter, not the usual media sensationalism, not the gossip that often swirls around the royal family. What emerged was an intricate, well-orchestrated digital campaign.
It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said.
Designed with precision, funded strategically, and executed with alarming intent. Every thread, every pattern, Every connection told a story far darker than simple online criticism. The investigators had painstakingly traced the networks behind the attacks. Bot armies, disguised as ordinary accounts, were deployed en masse to amplify narratives of cruelty and fear. Financial trails led to shell companies, some registered in jurisdictions designed to obscure ownership and accountability. Messages were synchronized with such uncanny precision that they appeared organic, spontaneous, and overwhelming to the casual observer. But no detail was accidental. Every tweet, every post, every coordinated attack was deliberate.
Just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society I hope we could and can become.
A weapon forged to strike at the heart of Catherine, Princess of Wales. Perhaps most haunting was the timing. Activity spiked during Catherine's recovery from chemotherapy, a period of physical vulnerability and profound emotional strain. The assaults were not aimed at achieving headlines or generating clicks. They were aimed at exploiting her humanity, at eroding dignity and resilience at a moment when she could least defend herself. Each digital strike was calculated to destabilize not just her public image, but the very equilibrium of the royal family. This was an assault on her body, her spirit, and by extension, the monarchy she represented. It became painfully clear that this was not a public relations problem to be managed with a carefully worded statement or a brief media appearance. This was digital warfare. The objective was not discussion or debate, not opinion or disagreement. It was manipulation, aggression, and cruelty packaged as information. The attackers understood that the Crown's vulnerabilities were human, that its strength relied on the resilience and well-being of those who bore its burdens silently. By targeting Catherine at her most vulnerable, they aimed to create ripples of instability that would cascade outward, threatening both family and institution. As William studied the dossier, page after page, a stark clarity emerged. Protecting Catherine was no longer just about shielding her from gossip or protecting her privacy. The monarchy itself was under threat from an invisible enemy.
How Scotland's first dedicated design museum is already inspiring the next generation.
One that could strike with precision and anonymity, exploiting global networks with ease. The dossier revealed a reality more unsettling than any scandal, an organized, cold, and methodical assault designed to destabilize through fear and cruelty, rather than through public debate. The palace now faced a choice: ignore the threat and risk the erosion of trust and safety, or respond decisively, building defenses in law, technology, and influence to secure Catherine, the crown, and the future. In those pages lay the blueprint of an invisible battlefield, where strategy replaced spectacle, silence replaced fanfare, and every move had to be calculated. The monarchy was no longer simply a symbol, it was a target, and the war being waged against it was as modern, ruthless, and insidious as the world in which it now existed. Careful scrutiny of the dossier reveals that the digital campaign was deliberately timed during Catherine's chemotherapy recovery. And how deeply has this campaign affected the Princess of Wales? Let's uncover the full details. Catherine's quiet question. Beneath the layers of intelligence reports, strategy meetings, and calculated security measures, there existed a moment that was intensely human, deeply personal, and quietly devastating. It occurred not in the glare of cameras, not under the scrutiny of the press, but in a serene, muted morning at Anmer Hall. The skies over Norfolk were a dull, soft gray, filtering light through heavy curtains and casting long shadows across the room. In that subdued atmosphere, Catherine, Princess of Wales, sat in thoughtful silence, her presence both fragile and resolute. The months leading up to this morning had been extraordinarily difficult. Catherine had endured a series of grueling medical treatments, each one leaving her physically weakened and emotionally drained.
Lots of people who are suffering with, addiction or poor mental health, and hearing time and time again that...
Yet despite the exhaustion that threatened to slow her every movement, she was resolute in her determination to return gently to public life. She moved with care, spoke softly, and carried herself with an elegance that masked the toll taken by her journey. Every step, every gesture was deliberate, a balancing act between the demands of her public role and the private vulnerability of her recovery. William, ever watchful, was at her side. His eyes, normally calm and protective, were sharp with worry, reading every pause, every subtle signal of fatigue, and every flicker of emotion across her face. He understood, more than anyone, the extraordinary pressure she faced, not just from the obligations of royalty, but from the relentless attention of the world, where admiration and scrutiny existed side by side, often in tension. It was in this quiet, fragile moment that Catherine asked a question so raw, so piercing, that it shattered the centuries-old tradition of royal restraint. Her voice, soft yet unflinching, broke through the muted silence of the room. "Why do they hate me for surviving?" The words, simple in construction, were explosive in meaning. They revealed the unspoken cruelty and relentless hostility she had endured, attacks that were not simply opinions or commentary, but deliberate attempts to undermine, belittle, and isolate her at her most vulnerable. In that instant, the room seemed to hold its breath. The question was more than personal. It was emblematic of the delicate balance between duty and humanity that royalty demanded but rarely acknowledged. For William, the meaning was immediate and chilling. He realized that restraint, the conventional wisdom that silence protects, was no longer noble. Remaining passive, hoping the storm would pass, would not shield Catherine. It would abandon her. The protective silence that had long been considered the safest course was now an accomplice to harm. The weight of her question reverberated beyond the quiet Norfolk room. It crystallized the stakes of their next decisions, the urgency of action, and the necessity of drawing a line that could not be crossed. What had once been a strategy, confined to papers and protocols, now demanded a human response, fueled by love, loyalty, and the raw necessity to defend the dignity and safety of the woman he had vowed to protect. In that simple, haunting question, the reality became unavoidable. The personal had collided with the political,
Who's led the centre and built many of the relationships here today.
and the time for cautious inaction had ended. William understood that protection required decisiveness, courage, and irrevocable clarity. Silence was no longer a shield, it was surrender. And in that moment, the path forward, however painful and irreversible, was clear. Prince William understood that his wife needed urgent protection from the digital campaign, given its impact on her. But how will King Charles respond to the dossier? And what does defending Catherine truly mean for the monarchy? Now let's unravel how the palace moves quietly behind the scenes. When the king saw the truth. The moment William walked into Clarence's house that morning, the air felt heavier than usual, thick with the weight of unspoken urgency. In his hands was the dossier, the culmination of weeks of painstaking investigation, evidence that left no room for doubt or debate. Without a single word, he placed the folder before King Charles, allowing the documents to speak louder than any explanation could. The king looked down at the pages, and in that instant, he understood the gravity of the situation. This was no ordinary family disagreement, no fleeting media frenzy, no gossip spun out of control. It was deliberate, coordinated, and targeted. The dossier detailed a campaign that was both intricate and chilling. Patterns of digital assault, financial trails, synchronized messaging, and covert operations traced back to carefully constructed networks. The timing was precise, designed to strike at the heart of the monarchy's most human vulnerability. But the implications went beyond Catherine, Princess of Wales. Every attack, every exploit, every calculated move threatened the institution itself. As Charles absorbed the evidence, he realized that defending Catherine was inseparable from defending the crown. To protect one was to protect both, and to hesitate would be to invite further chaos. The king's reaction was quiet, but firm, a measured decisiveness that spoke volumes. There were no rash declarations, no public confrontations, no unnecessary dramatics. Instead, a rare alignment took shape within the senior royals. They gathered not for spectacle.
That is the timeless wisdom of Indigenous people.
but with a shared understanding that the moment required precision, unity, and unwavering resolve. Together, they charted a course that would safeguard Catherine, the monarchy, and the fragile equilibrium between the two. The palace machinery moved swiftly and silently. Legal teams were mobilized to erect barriers that would prevent further exploitation. Digital firewalls were activated, tracing and blocking coordinated attacks before they could escalate. Commercial pathways, which had been leveraged to exert influence, were quietly frozen, severing avenues of indirect pressure. Media outlets received discreet warnings. Any amplification of these organized attacks would carry consequences that would be enforced without hesitation. This was not about retaliation, but containment, control without spectacle. What distinguished this response was its subtlety. The Sussexes were not publicly confronted, humiliated, or dragged into headlines. They were not antagonized or vilified. Instead, boundaries were drawn, firm and final. Communication channels were shut.
It has been an incredibly tough couple of months for our entire family.
Influence was curtailed, and access to the royal inner circle was methodically restricted. The door did not slam with noise or fury. It closed with precision, a deliberate act that left no room for ambiguity. This was containment executed with strategy, not emotion. By the end of that day, the palace had shifted. Every move, every decision, every preventive measure was now calibrated to ensure that Catherine's safety, and by extension, the crown's stability, was unassailable. The public would not witness the mechanics of this action, but within the walls of Clarence House, the message was clear. Boundaries had been established, protections put in place, and a line had been drawn. Once crossed, it could not be undone. In that quiet, decisive manner, King Charles and the senior royals ensured that the monarchy could endure, that Catherine was shielded, and that the attacks, though relentless in their design, would no longer dictate the family's path. The door was closed, and this time, it stayed closed. The royal family stood with William, agreeing that Catherine must be protected, no matter the consequences. But what does William's decisive action signal for the future of the monarchy? Could it reveal how he might lead when he ascends the throne? Now, let's explore the vision of a slimmed-down monarchy. A leaner crown. As the royal landscape subtly shifts, experts and insiders alike widely anticipate that Prince William intends to follow in his father's footsteps by establishing a streamlined, more focused monarchy. This isn't about shrinking for the sake of optics or trimming ceremonial duties. It is a deliberate strategy to modernize an institution long weighed down by tradition, expectation, and public scrutiny. A slimmed-down monarchy means fewer senior royals will carry the public-facing responsibilities of the crown, allowing those chosen to operate with concentrated authority, discretion, and efficiency. For William, the stakes are high. He is tasked not only with upholding centuries of tradition, but also with adapting the monarchy to the pressures of the 21st century. Every royal engagement, every diplomatic duty, and every public appearance is now weighed against a broader strategy. Who can best represent the crown while maintaining loyalty, judgment, and alignment with the institution's evolving priorities? This is not a casual reshuffling. It is a thoughtful and deliberate recalibration of influence and responsibility. Royal commentator and former BBC correspondent Jenny Bond observes that William already possesses a clear understanding of which family members will serve as the core pillars of the monarchy moving forward. Some of these choices represent striking departures from King Charles's current arrangements, signaling not only continuity in royal leadership, but also a bold rethinking of the institution's hierarchy. These shifts are about more than appearances. They are about trust, capability, and the ability to bear the crown's burdens without compromise. This focused approach also helps explain recent high-profile decisions, including the strategic distancing of Meghan Markle from active royal duties. Her absence from the inner circle was not merely reactive or punitive.
And then I said, okay, I've always loved being able to share. I've always loved...
It aligns with a broader philosophy of concentrating influence and authority, among those fully integrated into the monarchy's long-term plans. In this model, the crown is designed to function as a lean, disciplined institution, rather than an expansive network that risks dilution, distraction, or vulnerability. Those outside this carefully selected inner circle, regardless of fame or past involvement, are gradually distanced to protect both operational efficiency and the integrity of the royal family. The rationale behind this approach is clear. Over decades, the monarchy has faced relentless media scrutiny, shifting public expectations, and repeated scandals. A larger, sprawling institution has shown itself vulnerable to disruption, distraction, and reputational risk. By contrast, a smaller, focused group allows swift, decisive action in sensitive matters, whether it involves safeguarding Catherine, managing internal disputes, or navigating high-stakes public engagements. Every delegation, appointment, and line of access is now a calculated safeguard to ensure stability and protect the crown's future. From the public's perspective, much of this change is subtle. Appearances remain ceremonial, polished, and familiar. But behind the palace walls, a new hierarchy is emerging, with William at its center, carefully placing his most trusted allies in roles of authority, responsibility, and discretion. This leaner, more strategic monarchy is designed to survive pressures, evolve with the times, and operate with precision. A crown reimagined for the demands of today and tomorrow. William's moves, including the firm handling of Meghan's royal future, are the first visible signs of this transformation, a bold, calculated effort to protect, modernize, and preserve the monarchy for generations to come. So, what do you make of William's decisive action? Could Meghan ever recover from this permanent severance? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.